Welcome, everybody. It's our last day of our virtual summit, and we are very happy to have our friends from Coraggio here and our friend Harriet from Visit Detroit. First, thanks to all the sponsors, Offbeat Travel, Pick LJ, Explore Brookhaven, Miles Partnership, Visit Lauderdale, and Visit Greater Palm Springs. We'd love to see you on video. It's always good to see the faces that are watching the sessions and all of that. Make sure you're muted if you're not talking. Definitely leave questions and comments in chat. The more engagement we have from you, the better these sessions are. And yeah, we'll tell you more about other ways to engage with us, including our awards dinner and our upcoming CDTP program. But I don't want to short shrift our panelists. So welcome to David and Jen from Coraggio and Harriet from Visit Detroit. David, you want to take the baton?
I will take it. Thank you very much, Ronnie. Very excited to be here talking with all of you today, and excited to be presenting with Jen and Harriet. We're going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I have a deck. So let's flip over here. And presentation mode. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Great. Well, maybe we'll start off with quick introductions, but our presentation today is why DEI still matters for DMOs and how to engage your community in that work. I think this is a timely session because of there's been a lot of news lately about people pulling back from DEI, people challenging DEI politically, legally, all sorts of things like that. So I think it's an important question for us to answer, and we're going to do our best to do that today. We're going to quickly dive into the business case and then get to the real star of the show, which is Harriet from Visit Detroit. But let's kick off with just some quick introductions. I'll start. My name is David Naczycz. I am a senior associate principal at the Coraggio Group. I am also a board member for Travel Unity and have been a supporter of Travel Unity for some time. I also am a volunteer and a member of another organization called White Men for Racial Justice. So this work is near and dear to my heart, and I feel privileged to be able to continue to work on it through Coraggio and our work with destinations and around DEI. But I'm going to flip it over to my colleague, Jen, so she can introduce herself.
Hi, thanks so much, David. It's my pleasure to be with you all. This is my second Unity conference. Jen Gray O'Connor, I'm a senior associate principal with Coraggio Group as well. I serve on our internal DEI committee as well as on the Miles DEI committee. So this work is deeply important to me, and it's going to be a great session talking about some best practices we see, and then really giving the floor over to Harriet to hear a little bit more about how Visit Detroit is really elevating this work as well. David, would you like to have a little introduction from Harriet, or do you want to save a full introduction as we get going?
That's a great question. Why don't we have her introduce herself now, and then we can we'll get to her pretty quickly in this presentation. So I think now is the right time to do it. How about you?
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jen, for inviting me to participate. This topic is very near and dear to me and very significant. And as we, discover and explore various opportunities to make Detroit as a destination better. But a little bit about me. I've been with Visit Detroit for 35 years. I am the Vice President of Customer Partner Services. I handle all the conventions that come into our wonderful city. I manage our membership department and also our destination services department. So I'm very pleased to be and join you guys this afternoon.
Thank you, Harriet. And just a little bit about Coraggio Group. If you're not familiar with us, we are a consulting firm. We work with a number of different types of clients, but one of the types of clients we work with often are destination management organizations. And our vision for all of our clients, no matter what industry they're in, is to help them build thriving communities and healthy cultures. And one of the ways that we do that is through engagement with communities and elevating the voices of those that don't necessarily get to participate in these discussions all the time. So that's part of the work we do. We get involved in strategic planning. We get involved in community insights and research. And then we get involved in activating plans and strategies for our clients as well. So we've been around since 2005. We're members of GSTC, and we are active supporters of Travel Unity through the Miles Partnership, our parent organization, and other DEI efforts as well, in addition to that one. Oh, all right, sorry, flipped on. I thought we would start off our presentation by doing a little survey and see what we have on this on our call today. But we're going to start out with this first question: is how important is DEI to your organization? And you can scan that QR code or just go to slido.com to make your vote. And let's see what people think about DEI and their organizations. And I'm hoping this works. It's the first time I'm using Slido. All right, we're getting results in. And as I suspected, we are preaching to the choir. So everyone here on this call thinks that this is either very important or least important. So that's great to see. Let's go to our next poll, which will talk about how you're doing as organizations. So this is a second poll. This one is, how is your organization or destination doing on DEI? Let's give it a few more seconds here while everyone gets their vote in. All right, so most people are doing okay. So it's a little bit lagging behind the importance score. So people feel it's important. Organizations think it's important. Organizations, yet no one's crushing it, which is too bad because I really wanted to say someone was crushing it. But most people are doing okay, or you got some people not doing much. So the actual actions lagging behind intentions, which is something we're going to talk about in this session. So what I want to run through right now is just the business case for DEI. And you've probably heard this before. We've got a lot of people on this call who think this is really important work. So you probably are even familiar with a lot of the things I'm going to talk about. But I'm just going to run through it. Perhaps this information is useful to you or something you can use afterwards. We'll share a link at the end of the presentation that'll give you access to some of these studies. But I want to start out with a McKinsey & Company study. McKinsey & Company has done a number of studies over the last 5 years around the business case for DEI since 2015, actually. So you can see there are different studies. This is their most recent study in 2023. And one of the things they pointed out was that every year they've done this, it's gotten more important. Diversity has increased in importance in terms of how it pays off for an organization. So what you're seeing in this is that companies, 39% of companies, the difference between performance is 39% between companies that have diverse representation and that do not have diverse representation. And they looked at both gender representation and ethnic diversity representation and found both of those were now at 39%. So that is a significant increase particularly for gender, over what it was just less than 10 years ago. So it's becoming more important, not less important, to the bottom line of businesses. So that's something to take away from this slide. Interestingly enough, if you read the study, they did 3 case studies within the study that they drilled down on, and 2 of those case studies were travel industry companies. IHG Hotels and Air New Zealand were both companies, were organizations that they highlighted that are doing exceptional work around DEI and exceptional work in terms of diversity within their leadership and their board. Okay, for travel, we looked at a number of studies, but this was one that I thought was extremely interesting, is that 40% of baby boomers identify as having a disability after they're 65 years old. And this is the largest generation out there. They're traveling. This is a big customer group for all destinations, and they are identifying as having a disability. Oftentimes when we think of the community that has disabilities, we don't think of our senior citizens. And this is highlighting that. You got a lot of people going through your destinations that fall into this category. I can speak personally, not that I'm in the category, but my parents just took a trip out to the Grand Canyon and talked about how many things they couldn't do because they just weren't fit enough or didn't feel able enough to make the journeys into some of the things they were seeing on that trip. So it's something for all of us to think about when we look at a disability and abilities. An Expedia study showed that 7 out of 10 consumers would choose a destination, lodging or transportation, that is more inclusive to all types of travelers, even if it's more expensive. So that is an important finding there from Expedia, that this is important to all travelers, regardless of whether they need accommodations or whether they are part of a marginalized group. This is 7 in 10 of all consumers. MMGY had a study in 2021 looking at the spending power of the U.S. Hispanic population, pegged it at almost $114 billion on domestic leisure travel in 2019. So that's quite a high number. There's a lot of money being spent by people in different groups. They did another study in 2019 of Black travelers and showed that their spend was at almost $130 billion. So these are huge customer groups for attractions, for hotels, for operators, and for destinations. So it's something to pay attention to. There's the definite impact on the bottom line. And then finally, attitudes are changing. So we talked about boomers and their needs on travel. Well, at the other end of the spectrum, when you look at millennials, when you look at Gen Z, the importance of inclusive travel is increasing. So again, in the Expedia study, 78% of survey respondents said they had made a travel choice based on promotions or ads that they felt represented them. And for millennials, the figure was even higher. 84% have made a travel choice based on representation in travel advertising. So that's huge. These numbers are massive. So it's even more important as these generations move into primacy in terms of spending, in terms of the people showing up on travel and in destinations. And there is a generational gap. Inclusive policies, 77% of those aged below 40 likely to book inclusive properties versus just 57%, though that's still a high number, frankly, of those aged over 40. And that's only going up as we move into Gen Z. So increasing importance. Again, this is with all travelers. This is not just people who you would think of traditionally as being part of inclusive travel. This is everybody wanting to be included and wanting everyone else to be included as well. So that's just a quick snapshot on some various studies that talk about how important this is from a business case standpoint. What we want to talk about a little bit now, and I'll throw it back over to my colleague Jen, is some examples of destinations that are doing things that are helping with inclusive travel. So Jen, take it away.
Great. So hopefully you're convinced by these studies and David's remarks that there is clearly a business case for creating an inclusive destination, not just kind of a moral case, but there's kind of a financial bottom line for creating an environment that's going to be really inclusive and that's going to welcome visitors with all different kinds of needs and backgrounds. And so we wanted to dive into a few case studies on how destinations have done this, both in their kind of regular branding and marketing activities, as well as when they're engaged with us doing their strategic planning. And so in this section, we'll look at 3 different ways that destinations have tried to lower the barriers for participation in both the input process when, our DMO partners are kind of trying to understand what are the priorities and community needs, as well as, again, that real decision-making and planning process. So the first example we wanted to highlight comes out of Sonoma County. So one of the great things that Sonoma County really looks to do is to make sure that there are no language barriers to participation. So when they do outreach, they make sure that they have a Spanish language interpreter, as well as occasionally an ASL interpreter. And so there's a concentrated effort to make sure that folks participating in a survey, folks participating in a focus group are able to do it in the language that they feel most comfortable. The other thing that I think is great about the outreach that they do is that they offer stipends, especially when they're doing a focus group and asking people for their time. They try and compensate both through direct gift cards as well as transportation credits if they're doing something in person. But again, what they're trying to do is just understand, what are the common community barriers to getting involved with the destination and then trying to address those directly. Another case study that we wanted to uplift is this idea that in order to get participation, rather than always having an event that you all are hosting, trying to leverage and find places where folks are already gathered, and then trying to have some conversations around those situations. So the first is really leveraging your governor's conference. This is one, Dave and I are often attending governor's conferences, and we notice, there's a lot of great ideas that are highlighted, but there's maybe a lack of places in which participants can actually give input and get more involved. And so really leveraging those times when folks are already gathered. Another example we want to highlight is really using a mobile visitor center. And this is something, Harriet, if it comes up organically, we'd love to hear more about the way that Detroit does this. But also in our work with Visit Monterey, they also have a mobile visitors center that goes to different community events. So again, really thinking about if participation, folks coming to your events is a barrier, being able to go where folks are already gathered. And then our third case study is thinking about, how can you really elevate communities that have been marginalized and have been harmed by structural inequalities? And so looking at the Montana case study, they not only asked for input from different communities at the onset, but they really invited different communities to participate in their planning process. So both regionally as well as at the state level, they had participation by Indigenous communities throughout their process. And so for us, it's key not just to be a listener, but to make sure you're activating communities to be decision makers with you so that you can co-create a plan that's going to make sense and that's going to center their voice and their needs as well. And so those are kind of some quick high-level ideas. I would love, especially as we get into Q&A with Harriet, if other folks want to bring up things that have worked in your destination, ideas that you have for lowering those barriers and increasing community engagement. This is going to be a great opportunity for us to just compile some great work. Great. And with that, we have some questions prepared for Harriet to introduce the deep work that Visit Detroit is doing. They recently went through an NFL draft process that I think really, to me, was an impressive display of some deep and thorough engagement throughout their community. And so we'd love to hear more about that. And then we have some questions that we'll be asking Harriet, but would love for you all to either use the raise hand and unmute to ask questions after we've completed ours, or you can put some questions in the chat. And David, I think I'm kicking it to you to ask our first question.
You are indeed. Oh, welcome, Harriet. Thanks for joining us today. It's really exciting to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to just start out by asking you, what does it mean to you to be a welcoming and inclusive destination?
So, I'm going to always go back to the years of experience that I've been with Visit Detroit. That's 35 years. And I am a baby boomer. And so I think baby boomers are the bomb. But I think that, and I'll talk about the NFL draft, but it's just it's kind of common sense. It's creating a space. I feel that everyone feels that they belong. No matter, who you are, where you come from, what you look like, that's inclusive and welcoming destination. And it's not about the diversity of it all. It's about creating opportunities, not just for the visitor, not just for our stakeholders, but for our residents. And I will talk a little bit more about that, because when we talk about an exclusive destination, we always miss that major component, and that is our residents. And they make a difference when you're welcoming groups. And also, just to be really honest, we're still learning. People are still learning about DEI, learning about inclusive, being able to have frank conversations about addressing the inequalities that happen in various communities. So you have to be willing to kind of talk about it. Feel free to express your concerns. And you know what? And I think once you make sure that people feel that they belong, that there's a space for them, that you can create a great destination for visitors and also for people to thrive in their own city.
Yeah, I think you highlight a really great point, which seems very simple, but I don't think everyone realizes it. Talk about it, just talk about talking about these issues is a great first step.
I think it's and I want to go back on it. It's issues that we talk about: race, we talk about marginalized communities, we talk about the isms, the sexisms, the ageisms, the racism, and people are afraid to have really, really transparent conversations, because I think there's some judgments, but it's not. It's an understanding. And I think once we come together and make sure that we understand each side, I think we can have a better community and definitely a better community to welcome visitors.
Great. Thank you, Harriet. Why do you think it's so important that destinations are inclusive and welcoming to diverse travelers? I mean, I've just made that whole spiel about the business case, but how would you describe it, and why would you think it's important?
So I don't focus on the return on investments. I don't focus on heads and beds. I don't focus on, occupancy rates. I think I focus more on the value of the city. I focus on the respect that travelers should have when they walk into or come into your city. I feel that if they feel that they are a part of the landscape, if they feel that they are a part of your brand stories before they come in, I feel that if they feel that the people are welcoming, I think that makes for an inclusive, exclusive destination for travelers. I think that maybe sometimes outsiders feel that destinations really don't understand who they are. Being here for 35 years, the needs have really changed. Travelers are looking for experience. They're looking for unique neighborhoods. They're looking for something that they will not get at home. And I think that when we start opening up to the various communities, to the various residents, to various neighborhoods, we can be inclusive of all people who travel. And they just want to be seen, respected, and heard.
What are some of the challenges that you face in bringing voices that are not traditionally heard to the table? And what have you done that's been successful in that work?
Well, it's kind of fighting the status quo, it's fighting the people that are empowered. It's fighting the major, the hotel chains, the restaurants, when, the typical, how many people are coming through my doors, and what is my return on investment. And I think also it's fighting and really understanding the historical concerns and issues that have faced marginalized groups. And I think we need to break down barriers. And I'll talk about what we did for the NFL draft. And this was something that we...
There are different colors of trees. It's great.
I think someone is talking. I'm hearing. So I'll talk about the what we did for the NFL draft. We have hosted major conventions. We have hosted ABA. We have hosted NTA. We have hosted the Super Bowl, the Ryder Cup, the men's Final Four, major events. It's not until we hosted the NFL draft, we realized how important community engagement was. I've always realized that, but it takes your board, it takes senior leadership to understand when you bring in these major events, you have to have the buy-in with our residents. You know, you have to have it from the airport, from the communities, because it's important. And a lot of times, and I'm telling you in Detroit, and I just have to talk in Detroit, our residents have felt excluded. They felt like, okay, something is coming in. How does that affect me? So we decided to design I would say, an initiative that is called the On the Clock Tour, where we branded our mobile visitor center. And instead of asking the community to come downtown to the event during the NFL draft, we went to 20 communities. We went to neighborhood recreational centers. We met them where they were, and we planned events. We got them excited. We got them engaged, and we educated our residents about what Visit Detroit does, what's the hospitality, and the purpose of why we're bringing the NFL draft to Detroit. And let me tell you, this was an overwhelming success. We couldn't keep up with the demands from various communities. And Visit Detroit represents 3 counties, Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, and there's over 200 various neighborhoods, and we couldn't get to them all. But what was so successful about that is that they are still talking about that today. And they said no other event has ever included residents and communities like what we did for the On the Clock Tour.
That's great. It sounds amazing. What's been the impact on Visit Detroit's direction and initiatives because of that work and because of similar efforts?
So we are in the process, and this is the first time in creating a community advisory committee. We are in process of working with small advantage businesses, women-owned, LGBTQ plus, veterans, and people of color. This is the first time that we have actually leaned into including these small businesses, the marginalized community, into our hospitality community. And we are excited. We are constantly meeting now with community grassroots organizations. That's not anyone political, but the common regular people who are really want to make their neighborhoods and communities heard and seen when we are inviting visitors into the Metro Detroit area.
How are you doing your outreach when you're pulling these folks into the conversation? How are you identifying them? How do you connecting with them?
Well, the great thing about it is the NFL draft was really a jump start, and people organically came to the table. People were very interested in how they could be a part. So that was a start. And then it's word of mouth. And then it's just getting on the phone, and then it's just knocking on doors. It's not anything that is, scientific. Going to neighborhood communities, going to neighborhood organizations, and just talking about the good works that Visit Detroit is doing. But how do you make us better? So it's just grassroots communicating and just talking with local organizations.
That's amazing. All right, I'm going to throw it over to Jen for some additional.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would love to hear a little bit more about, why this work is important to you personally.
Well, I've been in this industry for a very long time, and I have to speak from who I am, an African-American woman that has personally, as I felt, has been marginalized and looked over. And that has been my drumbeat. That has been a passion for me. And if I can make an impact with what I do for a living, I have someone coming in and watering my plants. Thank you. If I could make an impact on what I do to someone, a small business, a women-owned business, that is something that I want to leave. I think a lot of times people think leaving a legacy is leaving monetary things, leaving buildings, but it's touching and making an impact on a small business or an individual who felt displaced, not heard, and not seen. So that's just that's always been a passion, and I'm so glad now Visit Detroit is now on the same bandwagon with me. So I do have resources to push my passion to reality.
Yeah, it's excellent. One of the things that we know is that, representation matters on staff, especially in doing deep community work. So how do you see the diversity of your staff impacting your outreach efforts to create that kind of welcoming environment in Detroit?
Well, I think that people like to see themselves. I can talk all day about something that really doesn't directly affect me, but how authentic am I? Is it something like I'm checking the box? So I think it's very important that when we go out in these communities, when we talk to various businesses, that they kind of see themselves in the individuals that are speaking.
Yeah, exactly. And I know in Detroit, you have some work that you're doing in a focus area on kind of youth and the way in which youth are this amazing workforce pipeline. If you want to talk a little bit about that, of kind of reaching out upstream to get folks involved in hospitality and in DMO work.
Well, I think that's a universal issue, is how do we get young people, especially, diverse groups, involved with the hospitality industry. They don't understand the hospitality industry, and they don't see themselves in the hospitality industry, because I think we have did a horrible job of explaining how deep our hospitality industry is. It's not a housekeeper, and nothing against housekeepers. I love housekeepers. I was a front desk person, but it's organizations like Visit Detroit, Attractions, DMOs, your organization, is how expansive it is. And so what we want to do, and what we have done, is start early. I mean, once you get in high school, they kind of made up their mind. So we're starting early, grassroots, going into the elementary schools. And we did that during the NFL draft. We hosted a lot of young students talking about the significance of the hospitality industry. How does it relate to getting a sexy event like the NFL draft? A lot of people, they only understand the larger and more attractive events. So we try to capitalize on that. But it's a grassroots effort with the Detroit public school system that we're starting in, and trying to get them into understanding the importance of this industry. We have done site tours. I have spoke at various events. So it's starting now. We have partnered with MPI and PCMA on some of their programs. So we're kind of getting it started.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things I love about working with Visit Detroit is that you all really took DEI strategic planning seriously, and have a large DEI component to your strategic plan. And so would love to hear just a little bit more about how you've incorporated DEI into those strategic planning efforts.
So first of all, it's a core initiative. So and leadership really lean into that. Well, we started with our staff. And so we work with our internal staff, and leadership. We spoke to them, said this is one of our important initiatives that we want to engage and make sure that our staff is completely on board. And we created a DEI committee that internally, that is a very diverse committee. LGBT, people of color, straight, Black, white. And so we developed that committee, and we just let our staff just do whatever it takes to make sure that various voices are heard. So one of our components is the education component. Is highlighting the differences, is having speakers come in once a month and speak about various concerns, disabilities. We honor heritage. We always honor various months that we celebrate. So we do a lot of things, education, speakers, and then we also surveyed our staff to kind of really get where they are when it comes to DEI, their knowledge. And we found out it was very limited. So we're definitely focusing on the education aspect. We are going to have an unconscious bias seminar that will come up. And so people can really understand how maybe indirectly their actions or thoughts might affect a marginalized group.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you really like leverage the interest and the journey that your own staff are really on in order to do this work. And I also think it's so critical that you have a DEI plan, but also DEI, it's not just that. DEI is actually in every one of your initiatives, but you still gave it the space to breathe and to organically kind of fulfill the needs of staff.
Exactly. Exactly.
I have one more question, then I would love to elevate Lisa's question, and then would also sort of invite our participants to give us some questions in the chat to keep the conversation rolling. But would love to hear if you have any specific advice that you would want to share with other destinations or agencies on how they could really lean into this work in the future.
Yeah, I do. As you stated, it has to be a part of your strategic initiative in every aspect, in every level. Leadership has to really commit, not a check mark, not, okay, we're doing it because I think it's the right thing to do, and slightly lean into it. They have to commit to it. I would definitely say, form an internal committee. Talk to your staff. We received some surprising, some surprising information of how each and every one feel, and take the good with the bad. And you can't take it personal, because those are people actual thoughts and beliefs. And I think also you have to have some type of measurements. If you're going to do a program like that, you have to set goals and measurements. And at the end, you have to see where you weighed in. And so the DEI strategic initiative is part of our balanced scorecard. And so that's how we take it. We take it very seriously. That is how we mark how successful we have been in 2024 and 2025. Also, I think if you're interested in DEI, you have to prioritize the training. I think education and training is very significant in this in DEI component of part of being in your strategic planning. So that's and be patient. It's not going to happen overnight. We have Detroit is set up a little bit different. And I don't know for other cities, we have downtown and then we have suburban communities. So we have to make sure that we include everyone when we're thinking about DEI.
Yeah. Oh, I love that advice. I just want to underline, you all have built in these a form of accountability to the work, and really concentrated on the impact, not just outputs, but the actual impact of your work. And I feel like that's one of those amazing things that, over time, how successful that you've been in your efforts. Something I really
Exactly.
Well, let me just read out, Lisa had a great question in the text. Traveling can be such a potent force to change our implicit biases, from limiting to open-mindedness, to experience each other's lived experiences. How can a traveler or a tourist be an instrument for inclusion and shift in our worldview?
Oh, wow. So how can you know what? I think it's being honest when you do come into a community where you don't see yourself or feel that they are embracing who you are, I think it's just very easy is sharing what is needed when you come into a community. And it's a lot of times I think we as destinations get really narrow focus, as I mentioned about the return on investment. And sometimes by suggesting and letting people know what is lacking in your destination, I think could help with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great perspective, being like pushing the envelope in terms of being welcoming, but also creating like realistic,
Because,
you know.
right. Sometimes, you don't know what you don't know until someone tell you you don't know it. And so I think that, whenever I travel and I see something, I'm like, oh my God, this would be great if, and so because I know people in destination, I kind of share on my thoughts. So it's a growing, it's learning, it's continuing, it's going to be, failures. It's just, we're I think destinations are trying their best. And some destinations do it a little bit better of being more inclusive.
Yeah. Well, let me open it out for comments, questions, any follow-up that our participants would like to hear.
Another question from Amity. As a fresh graduate from HTM, while starting work and looking for jobs, how can I keep in mind the DEI for success in the job search process?
So, you know what, I have interviewed so many of the younger generation, and the first thing they ask me, and you should, is where are you with DEI? So it's really up to you, once you get that interview, to interview the organization and see if it's a good fit for you. A lot of times, people think, oh my God, I'm looking for the good fit for the organization. But it's a good question for you as someone starting off in the industry, is to question, how do you feel about DEI? What's your beliefs? Is it part of your strategic? Is it part of your core? So it's really up to you to push that value. And you have the power. I know that, you want a job. You have to have the power to go into an organization that fits your needs.
Harriet, I have a question. You guys have done so much great work there in Detroit, clearly, and it's been amazing to hear about it. What resources have you drawn upon? I know, this is a Travel Unity event. Travel Unity provides a lot of support. I know we at Coraggio and Miles Partnership have provided support, but what are the resources that Visit Detroit has drawn on to help you in taking on this work?
So this is we're starting new, but some of the resources and people that I kind of lean on is one of our organizations is the Michigan Minority Business Organization that came to the table. And we just had a very open, transparent conversation about how their organizations and small businesses felt and whether or not they fit into this industry. They really didn't even understand this industry. They didn't understand what we do. So I'm kind of getting mentored by people, small businesses, women-owned companies, grassroots organizations. Those are my resources to kind of bring back to make Visit Detroit a little bit better. It's nothing but education. I think that we don't put a lot of emphasis on being educated. And I think that's what I'm leaning on, resources. As far as financial resources, Visit Detroit is open to assist. We are still kind of mapping out what that looks like. But my resources is really the grassroots organizations that really, when we want to pursue other groups and other events, you know, what can we do better to be inclusive as a destination? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, that was definitely
Okay.
a good answer to the question.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Any
Any
other
more
questions
questions?
from the audience? Helen, go ahead.
I thought by now I would always have know that I'm muted, but not. Thank you very much, Harriet. I thought that was really fantastic. I have been in the hospitality business working with hotels for 16 years.
Yeah.
And I have to say that I discovered the destination, the DMO, afterward. And so your point about the breadth of this industry is such an important point. And I think the education about the breadth of the industry and the inclusion of the resident of the community as part of it is so critical. And I'm so happy that you brought that up, because I do think that needs to be a focus, that, you know, we're all involved and it's not segmented or siloed, so that everyone can come to the table and make it as good as possible. So thank you for raising that.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Helen. Any other comments or questions from the audience that we can share?
I'd like to say something. So I started in hotels, and like a lot of people in this industry, I got in by mistake. I was headed to law school. My parents said, go get a part-time job. I'm like, oh, there's a hotel opening up. I got a part-time job at the hotel. And I'm like, what is this industry about? And let me just tell you, this industry is such a wonderful industry, 40 years later. And what's so great about this industry now, they are open to say, you know what, we have not always did the right thing. And we're open to learn and change. And I see it when I go to Destination International. I see when I meet my colleagues, how it's important, the stewardship of it all, the looking at the residents and looking at our community. And what my goal was for the NFL draft is, let's not have them come in and drain our resources and leave our residents empty. Let's pour into our residents, and so they can be benefit by the draft. And so many times we drain the resources and it goes out of the community. We have to start keeping these resources in our community, and that will build a better hospitality community for people when we welcome groups in. So I think that we have done things a little bit backwards, but I think we're changing. We're rectifying. I know here in Detroit we are. So.
Yeah, I love that, Harriet. I think that's such a great perspective, that in order to create that welcoming environment, in order to get residents to feel connected, part of it is about them seeing the bottom line, seeing like positive impacts from your work.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's, we spend a lot of time now talking with our clients about stewardship, destination stewardship, and that's become a focus for us. And I think you hit it right on the head. Travel has to be more than just heads and beds. It has to have measurable impacts on the community that go beyond dollars spent and occupancy rates. There are other ways to measure that impact, and I think what you're talking about gets right to the heart of that. So.
Yeah, and I think the communities now are demanding it. I saw it's just a switch since post-COVID. They are demanding, answers. They are demanding to be at the table. They are demanding things, so I love that change. And then we have to just step up to the plate, and I think that there are some cities that do such a great job, and I want Detroit to kind of be lead in on those directions. And when we create programs such as our Community Engagement Advisory Committee, it needs to be sustainable. It needs to be after Harriet Carter leaves, after whoever, that committee and those efforts and those pillars of those initiatives are still leaving, and they're sustainable so everyone can benefit from it. So the sustainability of initiatives need to be not just a check, not just we're going to do it for a year. We need to focus on how do we sustain these initiatives with DEI.
Yeah. I've been thinking too a lot about Detroit. I'm based here in Portland, Oregon, and one of the ways in which I really see the widespread influence of a DMO is in that kind of reputation management. So this is a place that as portrayed in the media has taken a ding to, you know, how we're seen as a desirable destination. And so I can see the work of Travel Portland, Travel Oregon, and really trying to welcome visitors back in and show them, you know, what a great destination is. And I feel like in the same vein, you in Detroit have done so much work on hometown pride, getting residents involved, really showing the world what a desirable place Detroit is to visit as well as to live. So curious if you want to say more about those efforts.
Yeah, so it started with the change in the direction of our brand. For years, we had a brand that did not represent the community. So it's not authentic. You know, we had brands when people come in like pictures and videos, a diverse community, they never saw themselves. So why would Detroit be appealing to the minority? It would not. So we did a 360 and embrace who Detroit is. And once you do that, people are attracted to who you are, and not who you think you are, but who you are. And I love our new brand. When we move, the world move, and that's the truth. And so when you see our videos, when you see our pictures, you see Detroit finally.
Yeah.
And that's what visitors are attracted to, and that's what makes it inclusive.
Yeah, I love that. Authenticity is so crucial, you know, and so highlighting who you are, how wonderful that is. You're right. I think that's a crucial tactic.
Well, and I'm a big fan of your work as a hometown Detroiter myself. Just
Okay.
the growth and transformation of that community as a destination and as a city has been pretty amazing. So you guys are doing excellent work there, Harriet.
Thank you.
All right.
I see there's one more question in the chat, sort of in this vein of talking about wellness tourism. How can a location not traditionally involved get involved because of its local practices and healthy living? This type of inclusion can be so organically satisfying.
So say that again. How?
And Lisa, I invite you to come off mute and add some context if you'd like. But as I'm understanding this question, how could a location that's not traditionally seen as maybe like a wellness spot really leverage kind of local practices in order to bring tourists to the table for healthy living?
So Detroit, so I think a city needs to be who the city is and not who, you know, I think it should be authentic. If we are a wellness city, then we are a wellness city, but we are a music city. We are a culturally diverse city. So I don't think we can be all to everyone because it dilutes who we are. So, as far as how does a city become a wellness city, I'm not familiar. I can't answer that, but all I can say is the cities need to look at who they are, and they need to really showcase that. I don't believe in a city can be everything to all.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm thinking too, like the extensive waterfront development that Detroit's done, like just creating some access to outdoor recreation. Like it's not necessarily you all are promoting in the vein of
No.
living, but that kind of access just organically creates additional opportunities for people to be out, to be active.
Right.
Great. Well, thank you, Harriet, for all of this. This has been fantastic. It's fantastic to hear about all the great work you're doing. I hope it's been valuable for everyone that's joined us today and listened. Just to wrap up our presentation today, I got a few more slides to share with you. So let me share my screen. Let's see. There you go. For those of you that don't know, Coraggio is Italian for courage. And courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. And courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. That's a quote by Winston Churchill, but I think it fits perfectly into what we've been talking about today. One of the points we wanted to leave you with today is there is still work to be done. DEI released their social inclusion report last year, and it highlighted the progress that the industry has made, but it also highlighted that we're not there. There's still a lot of work to be done in terms of representation within our organizations, on our boards, on our staffs, and in how we're portraying our destinations to travelers and visitors the world over. So that's another great study we encourage you to take a look at. But if everyone could be doing the great work that Visit Detroit is doing, we'd be a lot further along, obviously, but not everyone is yet. And we've seen the pushback against DEI politically and in our society, which is inhibiting these efforts, but it clearly is still vitally important. And it obviously contributes to the success of a destination. Like, if you're going to be a successful destination, then DEI has to be one of the factors that you're paying attention to. There's a webpage that we've created with the studies that we shared with you today. So if you want to scan that QR code, that'll take you to the website. It's also in text below the QR code. But we encourage you to visit our site, download these studies and reports, and read them yourselves, and use them as you make your own case to your constituents, to your board members, to your community members, about why this is important work to be doing in working with destinations. And if you want any more information about Coraggio Group, please do reach out to either Jen or myself, or at CoraggioGroup.com is our website. We encourage you to visit us, take a look, interact, link to us on LinkedIn, whatever you want to do. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this event. I want to thank Ronnie and Ami at Travel Unity for inviting us to speak. I want to thank Harriet for joining us today, and my colleague Jen for her support in building up this presentation. And I want to thank all of you that have attended. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to meeting you again in person.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, Jen, and Harriet. This was a fascinating session, and we really appreciate the time and the energy that you all spent in preparing all this information to share with us. And thank you to everyone, all of our participants who attended. Just Brianna, if you can pop back to the slide, I don't want to be remiss in making sure we once again thank all of our sponsors for this event: Offbeat Travel, Pick LJ, Miles Partnership, Visit Greater Palm Springs, Explore Brookhaven, and Visit Lauderdale. Thank you so much for your support. And if you are peeling off on this session, we hope you'll actually stick around for the next one, which will be led by Ronnie Weiss, our ED. If you do have to pop off now, please do keep track of Travel Unity. We have a bunch of upcoming events and opportunities that we hope we can share with you. Brianna, if you can pop to that slide. We have a CDTP training that is happening in early November. That's Certified DEI Travel Professional. And we've created a bunch of flexible options and modules. So really, no matter what your schedule or budget, there would be an opportunity for you to take advantage of this course. We also have our inaugural awards dinner in New York City, early December. One of our earlier session speakers, Stacy Ritter from Visit Lauderdale, will be our honoree. We do hope you'll join us. It's going to be an event to celebrate trailblazers in DEI who've had real impacts within their organizations and communities, and also a time for us to get ready and charge ourselves up for 2025 and launching newer programming, both to further serve the industry as well as help groom our next generation of travel leaders. So please do remain engaged with us. And now we will get set for our next session. Welcome to the last session of our Travel Unity Virtual Summit.